This is Arts Alive. I'm Lynda Philippi. My guest is Joe Wilkins. Joe is a professor at Linfield College teaching writing and American literature. He is also the judge of this year's Paper Gardens through the Arts Alliance of Yamhill County, and he's a novelist, memoirist, novellaist, and a poet, right? So welcome. I'm glad you could be here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. Let's do first things first and talk about this year's Paper Gardens.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is the first year I'm judging it. I'm excited to be involved. I think it's just a great thing to have this contest for the community, for people to sort of have a place to send their work, to have this impetus, and I know sometimes I need the motivation too, to create, to take the time, and so I think this is a great thing for that.
Right. Now, dates. We want to talk about dates.
So you got to have your work in by the 1st of March, and then the award ceremony is May 5th, so the banquet at the community center. So
okay, the award ceremony.
Dates. Yeah.
I know that's always a really exciting evening, and people can find more information on the Arts Alliance of Yamhill County website.
Yes, yes.
So sure, that's great. There's different categories for kids and adults, and poetry and prose.
Different categories of poetry and then short prose. Yeah, so that kind of runs the gamut.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I bet you're looking forward to seeing what you're going to get.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I've judged a couple of grants, so I read the things that people have sent in for their grant applications and a couple of residencies, and then a number of college contests. So contests either at the institution I was teaching at or another institution, a writer friend somewhere else asked me to. So this will be, I think, the first time I've done sort of a more local community contest. So I'm excited for that.
You know what I think you're going to love are the kids' submissions because they're so varied and so creative and just so interesting, like to peek into those little minds, just see what they think about and how they express themselves.
Absolutely. I've got 2 kids, 6 and 4, and sort of keep a running tally of all the interesting things they say. It's a long list.
Yeah, of course. It really is. I know. I think, gosh, I wish when my kids were little I would have written everything down. I have like a few key things that stick in my mind that I always tell them. But, nowadays everything can be sort of recorded.
Right. No, absolutely.
No excuses, for sure. Well, let's talk about you a little bit.
Yeah.
So you've been in Oregon, like you said, at Linfield 3 years?
Yes, this is the middle of my 3rd year at Linfield. And really happy to be there. Linfield's just a great place. Earnest, hardworking students, really accomplished faculty who are also really great teachers and who take teaching seriously. And so, when I was applying for the job, I hoped that was the case. That was something I wanted, and I was really pleased to find out it was. So.
I think what's true is that at least the people I know who teach at Linfield, nobody wants to lose their gig. It's like no one wants to leave McMinnville.
Yep, it's a place you retire. It's not a place you leave to go elsewhere to retire. Absolutely.
It's like I want to stay here until I can't stand up anymore, and then I want to retire.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about your work. And you brought some of the things in, and I know you said you've got a memoir and novels and some poetry, and then this little novella. You want to talk about that a bit?
Sure. So this is Far Enough, a Western in Fragments, and this is pretty new, just this fall, and this came from trying to write longer fiction, and which I find really daunting. And an essay, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 words seems like something I can do, but anything much bigger than that, I think, oh my goodness, this is scary.
Yeah.
And
this guy's going to actually have to do something pretty soon.
But so I started to build this story out of these short little sections, and you'll see if you just open to a random page.
I saw the one where the guy loses his thumb or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all little short titled sections, and the story builds on itself. It progresses. But these sections are also contained in a way. So they're almost sort of these mini glimpses into this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment. And the story ends up covering quite a bit of terrain.
I think that's really interesting when you get a book like this of very, very short stories or maybe longer short stories, and then you read the next one and it's some of the same characters, but they've shifted it, somebody else's perspective. And then you go to the next one and it's the mother and she's talking about, and I think those are so fun.
Absolutely, and I think that's, one of the reviews of the book called it a postmodern Western. And the sense that nothing is quite sure all the time. We're always moving character perspective, or we're switching terrain, or we're moving elsewhere. Sometimes there's a lot of action, sometimes it's a much more meditative space. And I feel like that that in some ways is a very true way to write. Our own experience is fractured and doesn't sort of fit a linear narrative. And we're starting to recognize that more and more. And so that was one of my goals as well here, to try to capture that brokenness, that collage-like experience of life.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. I've been spending a lot of time with my dad. He's not well, so watching movies is one of the things that we do. And he has the old Western movie channel.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of old Westerns recently. And what's interesting is, I mean, they really are so linear. It's very simple.
Yeah.
There's the good guy on the white horse,
Yeah.
and then there's the bad guy with their
Right.
rattlesnake music, you know.
Right.
And it kind of goes A, B, C, boom, and you know what's going to happen in the end. And then it's the end comes across the
Right.
screen. And I
Right.
think, yeah, that's interesting, but you know, that's not the whole picture, obviously, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And especially my son's 6, so he's into good guys and bad guys right now. And one thing I've really had to talk with him about is, in real life, there's not really so many bad guys. There's
a few glaring examples.
There's people that make bad choices, and sometimes we make bad choices too. But often those are out of a space of not meanness, but ignorance or some other thing. And so I think that's another thing here. That's sort of the two main characters who feel like they're on this collision course. I wanted to delve into both of their lives and not make one the white hat and one the black hat, and let the reader off easily that way.
Okay, so and has it been received well?
Yeah, it's got some nice reviews. It's with a small press, so it's not a big book or anything, but it's got some nice reviews in a couple of places.
Yeah,
so
I can see
pleased.
clearly that this is not War and Peace here.
Right.
You know? and there's lots of white space, but you know what's
Right.
nice about that is it's one of those things that it's not daunting. You can pick it up and say, oh, I can do this.
I think in an evening or two you can finish it. So.
And then you might want to go back and look at it again. And
Right.
again.
Right.
Now, what about your memoir?
The memoir, The Mountain and the Fathers, Growing Up on the Big Dry. So this came out, it's hard to believe, but 2012 in hardback, and then in late 2013 in softcover. And I'm really proud of this book. It feels like, in a lot of ways, when I first started writing seriously, I didn't realize it, but this is what I was working on.
Okay.
Writing about growing up in the West.
Your story.
Writing about losing my father at a young age.
Oh, okay.
And writing about these issues of land use and masculinity and violence and all these things that mattered to me, though I didn't know I was putting them together. And slowly they did start to get put together, and they ended up in this book.
Do you want to read us a little bit from that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to, yeah. So this, too, it's kind of a pattern with me. Not quite as small, but it is as well built of short sections. So I'm going to read one of the short sections from the beginning.
Sure.
This is called Lake Water.
Okay.
The story goes that it was the heat of August, that on a whim they packed their fishing gear and filled the cooler and drove north all day to meet my father's friend Jack Peters at Current Lake, a deep pool of the Missouri shadowed by the Little Rocky Mountains. The whole place was crawling with rattlesnakes. Snakes sliding through the tall grass, snakes curled in the outhouse, snakes draped like question marks across the rocks. My mother walked everywhere with a long, stout stick to sling them off the footpath. My father carried a shovel and with it sliced the heads and rattles from those that twisted too near their tents. Jack Peters piled the dead snakes away from camp for the flies and to keep from scaring my 5-year-old sister. Despite the snakes, they caught a mess of trout that weekend and swam in the afternoons and drank a cooler of Rainier. They told stories late into the night, let the red-running embers of a pine fire play across their faces. They had a good time. And my mother tells me this was when I was conceived, this happy time on a lake of clear water near the blue-black spines of mountains. She tells me they had long hoped for another child, a son, and she tells me, too, about the snakes. But why? Why color the story with snakes? Why not simply say mountain, say hope, lake, pine fire? I think it is because it makes the story better, more memorable for sure, and truer as well. To tell the story without snakes would be dishonest. Snakes complicate and foreshadow, shift like a crawling wind, hide in plain sight. And the high plains of Montana are thick with them. Black and green water snakes ripple through irrigation ditches. Sandy-scaled bull snakes, as big around as a fat man's arm, curl and doze on gravel roads. Rattlesnakes shake their jangly tails off in the pear cactus and sagebrush. My mother tells me the story of my origin, which, like all our stories, is shadowed, mythic, and particular. And so in her gladness and her grief, she is obliged to speak of snakes. My mother tells me the story of an August trip into the mountains, of trout fried crisp in bacon grease, of rattlers swimming down the rocks. It had been a long summer of chaff and dust and tractor grease. The lake water hurt their hands. It was so cold.
Oh, that's amazing. Very
Thank you.
evocative.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that must have been kind of an interesting way to hear your origin story.
Yeah.
Okay, Mom, the snake thing. Is this Adam and Eve, or what's going on here?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think I always tell my students that the project of the essayist or the memoirist is never just to tell what happened. You know, in fiction, we read to find out what happens because we're worried the main character might not make it through. You know,
Right.
But in memoir and personal essay, we know the main character makes it through. You know, they're writing the story, so
Right. You're here.
there's no drama there. What the drama is what you make of the story.
Well, see, I could say
Yeah.
this. I could say that I feel your mother is brave to let go to that
Yeah.
degree that she could conceive a child knowing that there were snakes all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that too, and you know that comes in later as I speak more about her, about that sense of sort of these snakes swimming down through the stories of our lives. Absolutely. But how we make sense of our stories, I think, is the project
Sure.
of the memoirist.
Now,
Absolutely.
is your mom still with you?
She is, yeah.
Oh, okay, because you said you lost your dad at a young age.
Yeah. I lost my dad at a young age, and much of the book concerns that loss, grows out of that loss, really. And my mom stayed on the ranch, and we lived there our whole growing up lives.
Really?
Yeah.
That must have been rather difficult for her.
It was really difficult. And we ran it ourselves for a number of years, and then eventually when I was in high school, leased it out, and which sort of eased the pressure. And she had been working part-time at the county school and then got a full-time job there, and that helped. And then just, I don't know, not too long ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, she moved to Spokane, where my sister lives. And so, and that's been really great for her.
Sort of just full-on retired.
Yes,
and,
right.
Yeah.
She's close to a coffee shop and a good library and all
Perfect.
these things. Yeah.
Living the life of a lady of
Yes,
leisure.
absolutely.
She earned that.
Yes. Oh, without a doubt.
Oh my,
Without a doubt.
that's so incredible.
Yeah.
So I guess really, you write of, it looks like Notes from the Journey Westward. Is that another?
This is a book of poems. Yeah.
Oh, that's poetry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where I started was with poetry. I was an engineering major in undergrad.
Really?
And, I had an internship after my junior year and realized I didn't really like what I was doing, but I didn't know what else to do. And so, like so many students, I stayed in college a fifth year and ended up taking a few extra classes. And one of them I took was a poetry writing class. And it became clear to me very quickly that I love this, whatever it was, this poetry. And was sort of writing seriously ever since. And,
So you're thinking to yourself, I took all those engineering classes.
I know. I sometimes try to say, well, it taught me discipline, and it taught me
Sure.
hard intellectual work. But then other times I'm like, but I still would have rather taken a writing class.
Exactly. Well, so let's kind of come back around.
Yeah.
We're running out of time here. So you're going to be judging the Paper Gardens literary competition, and the deadline for submissions is going to be March 1st, and then the award ceremony will be May 5th.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean that's pretty wonderful. And in the meantime,
Yeah.
you're going to do some grading and
Yeah,
see some
yeah.
students and try to keep writing.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Lynda.
Thank you.